What's up guys, Cass here from GiveWave Studios, and on this one I'm going to show you guys how to turn these 26 pieces of foam that you see here into these Soldier 76 boot covers. Alright, let's get it. What you want to do is print out all of your sheets, tile them out on the floor, and just glue them edge to edge. And then you can cut out all of the patterns. There's some extra instructions here, and if you print it out in color, it'll show you what colors, so for example what 8mm is, what 10 is, depending on the color. If you don't have a color printer, just refer to the PDF on your screen to cut out the appropriate sizes for your parts. All right. You guys should have just as much information on your cutout patterns that you transfer over to your foam. All right, so just going to go ahead and cut these out real quick and catch you guys for the next one. Alright, so first thing we're going to start with is the base for the legs, which is going to be these larger pieces here. We're going to heat everything up. We're going to curve the pieces, and we're going to glue them together. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through that process and catch you guys for the next step. So here I'm just basically giving the pieces a little bit of curvature to make it more 3D and less of a flat 2D piece. As you can tell, I went from this flat piece to this more or less shaped piece. It doesn't have to be perfectly shaped like a half of a leg. You just need enough curvature in it that when you do put it together, you don't have to struggle with it as much. So I'm going to keep doing that and catch you guys for the gluing step. Okay, so now with our pieces curved, we're going to go ahead and put some contact cement on both edges, as we usually do with all of the other props, and then glue it together. Start from the most complicated curve, the most obtuse curve in the back here. Bring that in, just being careful that it is flush as possible as I'm gluing the two pieces together. Okay? And I'm just going to keep going down the line with it, making sure that nothing else touches except what I want to glue. And once I get to about this halfway point, I'm going to glue this bottom piece just to make sure that I don't overstep where the foam is supposed to be going. And so I'm going to start bringing this in from center. Like so. And we should have a nice calf piece at this point. There we go. We're starting to take shape. I'm going to do the same thing for the front. Fast forward through that step. Catch you guys for the next one. And there you go. Congrats. You've made the base of your legs for your Soldier 76 boot. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the next piece that we're going to add is this kind of like cover piece here. It would be a good idea if you wanted to bevel these outer edges, so I'm going to go over that in a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through that step. Catch you guys for the next one. All right, so back from the cutting area, as you can see, I've beveled a lot of the angles or the edges of this piece here, except for maybe this interior, which isn't super necessary because you don't get to see what that bevel looks like anyways from the top or the front. So first thing we're going to do is place it down and grab a marker and start delineating where it is that this is going to sit. So I'm just going to do it one side at a time. Just wrap this over itself. Now these lines, as accurate as you may think they are really just going to be tentative. So even as you're putting your glue down, you're going to want to put the glue a little bit past whatever lines you've put down, because more than likely it's not going to be an exact match, but it's close enough. So we have our bearings. I know where I'm going to put my barge, and I'm going to do it on both sides, put it together, fast forward through that step, and catch you guys at the next one. So now that we've made it to the back of the calf area here, you can see that we have a little bit of overlap. So what I'm going to do is kind of like tack it down and pick it back up. So I'm going to do just that. Cut a nice straight line, pull it back up, finish the cut. That way I'm not cutting through more of the material. Okay. Put this down and then right here. I'm going to glue the two away from the base, and then I'm going to bring them back down. Okay, so next up we're going to do these little knee pads. So these are just going to glue right here on these curved sides, right? And barge on both sides, put it together, and we're going to glue it to this piece right here. So I'll fast forward through that step, catch you guys at the next one. So after heating and bending my knee pad a little bit, I put it in here, just kind of get a sense of where it sits or where you want it to sit, and then you're just going to trace that line so you know which pieces that you're gluing to. All right. Okay, so our knee pad, I'm going to start at the center, right there, and then just follow that curve along the edges. There we go. Right. And we got that piece in. Right. So same as before, I'm gonna glue these two pieces together. I would also suggest that you put your transfer your lines on both sides, and also on this pattern there will be a dashed line in your printed out pattern. This is going to allow to do something like this. When I made these the first time around, this part here, because there was so much flex at kind of like the ankle area, this creased a lot with the foam, and so I kind of added this feature here so that when you do walk, the entirety of the foam doesn't get stressed out, just this piece that goes back and forth. So that's what that line is, if you guys are wondering, and you can add that to it if you'd like. It's literally just a cut halfway down the foam to allow for it to flex a little bit. Right. These here, you want to do your valley cuts first. So I'm going to go ahead on the pattern and cut straight down about halfway through the foam, careful not to cut all the way through it. So now that I've done a line in the middle, I'm going to do kind of like a 45-degree line on the edge that meets up with the middle line that I just did. Follow that all the way through. Okay. Same thing on the other side. And make sure both, like all three lines meet together, or the two lines on the outer part meet in the center. Okay. Once I've done that, I should be able to just peel a nice triangular shaped piece. So this is called a trench cut or a valley cut. You can make a bend now, right, on the outside, a nice smooth bend with no seams. Okay? So we're going to do that for both pieces, and then we're going to glue them together. So once our shin plate is assembled, what we're going to do is just tape this down on either sides here to just kind of keep that position in place. And what we're going to do while we have this here, you have these three strips, right? Small, medium, and large. And what we're going to do is start with the small. All right, stick it in there, move on to the medium, stick it in there, and then finally move on to the large, stick it in there. So basically we're making these straps 1, 2, 3. They all kind of end right on in the same area, but they look like one is shorter than the other. So we're gonna go ahead and mark where these intersect with our Sharpie. So I'm gonna bend this over. So I have the 3 pieces that I'm cutting. I kind of know where they're going. Since our piece is symmetrical, you're going to take the other 3 after you've cut these, put them on them, and use that for the pattern so that we can glue them to the edges of the shin plate right here. So before we actually cut the line that we did, I'm actually going to go ahead and give these beveled edge. So what I'm going to do is put my ruler right in between them here, using a nice fresh X-Acto blade, and then with the blade against the ruler to kind of like make sure that my line is consistent and straight, I'm going to go ahead and drag on this side and cut it. I'm going to do it this way so you guys get more of a sense to see what I'm doing. Add an angle, drag the cut all the way through, and once I turn this over, you can tell that I have a nice beveled edge, right? As opposed to this that's just straight. And I still have my lines here, so I know exactly where to cut. Okay, so we'll get back to the time lapse. Different ways you guys can do the strapping for this. I'm going to do magnets on either side, but you can also do this with Velcro or anything like that. So we're gonna put this aside for the time being. We'll do the magnet stuff last, and we're going to work on these 2 simple pieces. So these pieces right here, you have a delineation on your pattern on where to cut these. So I'm just going to make a simple slice right through this. Okay. Nothing too complex. 1 cut, 2 cut. And what we're going to do is grab this strip, and we're going to slide that in there and hopefully pull it out from the other side. We're just making sure that the dimensions are right for the slit and that this will actually work. Again, just making sure that it fits. Yep, and that should work. All right, so now that you have this, go ahead and grab a marker and then put a line on this piece of foam right here. Okay, so we'll end up gluing this on the inside. Right, gluing that on the inside, and we know now when we take this off and we put our vinyl, we don't need to put our vinyl past this point. Okay, put that aside for now and move on to the next step. Okay, and here we go. We go from this nice textured thing as opposed to just the plain foam. No. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. It's just an extra detail that I wanted to add to this particular build and to show you guys a little bit of the technique too. All right, so that piece done. What I'm going to do is bevel the edges on this as well. So same thing we've been doing. Grab a knife, drag the edges. Try to keep the angle consistent. And now we have a nice beveled edge as opposed to just a flat look. All right, so now that we have these tabs out of the way, we also have the circle that's gonna go in here. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can just grab a Dremel and kind of bevel the edge completely. If you have a bandsaw, you can just do it on a bandsaw. I'll show you guys how I would do this with a blade real quickly. So go ahead and just put my knife like static on the table, cut into it. Once I've gotten a cut, just kind of try and keep the blade consistently at the same angle. Rotate the circle at the edge of the blade while I'm making sure that the blade is constantly making contact with the table or the cutting surface that you're cutting on. That way you know you're not missing anything and that your cut is more or less consistent by the time you're done. So with that being said and done, voila. All right, it's not the cleanest cut I've ever made, but a quick way to get to it with the blade, and then you can just kind of like sand this down and even it out a little bit. All right, I'm gonna do mine with the bandsaw and I'll be back to complete the rest. Okay, so after cutting And sanding a little bit, you can tell that it is nice and smooth and pretty much perfectly circular. In contrast to the example that I was showing earlier, it's got little ridges here and there, but you can definitely smooth everything out with a Dremel or a sanding stick or anything of that nature. Okay? These are just gonna live in here. We'll get to that later. And so now I'm gonna move on to affixing the magnets in here. So I've got me a roll of neodymium magnets right here. So what I'm gonna do is about a 1/4 of an inch away from the end of these pieces, I'm just gonna make an impression with the magnet. All right. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I just pressed the circle in until it kind of showed up. And now with my Dremel, what I'm gonna do is use a rounded sand bit, and I'm just going to plunge it into the foam, being really careful not to go too deep as to puncture on the other side, right? I just want it deep enough that I can set the magnet inside of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward through that process. I'll do one with you guys first, real quick. Okay, hold that down. Be really careful to hold the Dremel very steady, because it will want to just jerk around. And once you have that done, it'll usually leave like this little nub, and you can usually just pull that right out. So right about there. Grab some Gorilla Glue, the gel kind, because it glues super quick. A little more around the edges. All right, here we go. Okay, stick that into place. Slide the other magnet right off of it. I'm gonna hold that in place. Right, this takes about 15-20 seconds to dry. And then once that is done, I'm going to realign it, and on this side I'm going to go ahead and press the magnet onto the base and leave an impression. Now with this impression, now I know exactly where I need to put the other magnet, right? So I'm going to do that for all 6 pieces. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this process and catch you guys for the next step. Alright, so now that all of my magnets have been installed, I also cut out a series of 6 2mm discs that I'm going to put right over the magnets. This is just going to ensure that the magnets don't pop out of their sockets, at least on the base of it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and barge these into place, and then we'll do a test fit, see if everything works. All right, and now that everything is said and done, I can hear that satisfying snap of everything aligning and working properly. So we're gonna go ahead and cut out these details now. Dig right in. So I'm gonna cut this out nice and slowly so I don't get any jagged edges. I was gonna make a where the party at joke, but I thought that might date me, but I guess it's too late for that now. Okay. That's fine. Notice how I get to the change in direction. I try not to take my blade out. Just kind of follow the line. So that way I get a cleaner indent when everything is said and done, right? And so basically what we're gonna do is just push it in and glue it to the inside edge so that it gives like that nice bit of detail there. And then we're gonna do the same thing here. Okay. I'm gonna push this in as well. But on this underside here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this, having transferred our lines, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this right up to the edge there. And here, just kind of dig the knife in and cut halfway through the foam. And then when I come back out here, I'm gonna cut this all the way through like I did on the other side, right there. All right. So now what this does is gonna give us a bit of flexibility at the ankle joint, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and excess to just kind of wipe it into the receiving end of it. Okay. And same thing as before. Put something in between it, like a scrap piece of foam or something, so that it dries without gluing somewhere that I don't want it to. Okay, we're gonna give that some time and put it together. All right, so now that our glue has had some time to dry, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer everything on the inside and start gluing these edges down like so. Okay, on this bottom piece, make sure that you leave this open. Obviously, if you did glue it down, you would undo what we just did here. So this is why this line runs right across where this is here. And then on this one, you can glue the whole thing. So just gonna tab everything right on down. And just try and make sure that the spacing is equal between the left and the right. And there we go. Okay, have like a nice little indent vent type situation going on. All right, so another reason why we don't tie this is because I'm gonna grab some elastic waistband and I'm gonna glue a chunk of it here and very loosely, right? So I'm not making this very tight. I'm keeping it pretty loose. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it's just so that this holds it in place, so that when we do step forward and this bends, it has something pulling it back the other way. All right, so I'm gonna cut about this much, and I'm gonna go ahead and glue that down. So I'm gonna fast forward through that process. Okay, so we're done. I put a little bit of a reinforcing piece on this since I only glued it with barge. And now, as you can see, when this goes forwards, it snaps right back into place, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so at this point, we're almost done with the bulk of the leg build. So we're gonna be moving on to the shoe, but before we do so, remember that your pattern had this kind of cross hatch lined area that you're supposed to cut out, but I told you guys not to cut it out until you were completely done with it. You can actually use this pattern to kind of like cut this shape out of it, or you can literally just slice this back open, and then you can just peel this whenever you put the shoe, the boot cover on and off. Go ahead and start this right about here. Okay. And just reopen this front part. Okay. And after doing that, I'm gonna put a small piece of foam right here to help prevent, because I did this on a seam line, if I pull and tug, eventually it might want to rip more. So I'm gonna put a piece of foam here to kind of help prevent that and stop that from happening. All right, so now when I pull, it's like the top of a zipper. It just prevents it from spreading any further. Okay, I have that. And that is pretty much it for the leg. All right. So for now, what I'm going to do is just insert my shoe in place. We're going to start by grabbing this piece, which is going to be the sole of the shoe, the outsole. And you have your outside and your inside. And this does matter because if you fold this in half, you'll notice that one is slightly longer than the other. And that's to compensate for the extra curve that this does on the inside here. Okay, so do make sure that you transfer that information over with your pattern. And we're just going to heat this up, stretch it out a little bit so that it actually fits. So I'm gonna go through that step. Catch you guys on the next one. so once we've glued the two parts, go ahead and grab some tape and pinch these two together so that we can start making the back piece here. So we also have these two pieces, which are the outer and inner parts of the heel, and the pieces that curve are the ones that are going to glue together, and then we're going to match them up to their respective sides here and here. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward through that process and catch you guys for the next step. Okay, so with this piece installed, you can see it goes all the way around, right up on the edge there towards the inner edge of your larger piece of foam, because this is a 5 mil on top of a 10 mil. So you should get like this giant hole left over here. Right? There should be some space here for ankle movement. So far, so good. So now what we're going to do is grab our discs that we cut out earlier, and we're going to use our elastic waistband to basically make these look like they're hovering. So we're going to attach this one permanently to the inside of the boot, and then attach the other end with a piece of Velcro to this part of the boot. That way, when you take this piece off, this will come with it, and then when you wear this, put it down, right? This will be like right up against the edge there. You'll pull at it, and because it's elastic, it'll come down, and you can strap it to the inside, and you'll have this effect of this just kind of floating in the middle. Okay? I'm going to fast forward through that process to catch you guys for the next step. Okay, so with everything else pretty much in place, the last thing I'm going to do is I cut these extra strips and barged this area here, just as a reinforcement to make sure that the elastic waistbands don't go anywhere. Like that. Okay, that'll be that. Now we're just going to do some Velcro on the inside of this. We have mobility here on the ankle, and then unstrap this now. Comes apart right there. And then on this end of the boot, I'm going to end up using some of the elastic waistband again and just attaching this with some clamps, or you can use some nylon webbing so that it's adjustable, so that this can clamp down on the shoe right here. Okay, so we'll start by replacing our tape down here with an actual piece of elastic strap. Okay, so my strap's put. I have my elastic waistband on the inside here. Grab some foam. Do a 10 millimeter all the way to even 2 millimeter, but just keep in mind that if you do a 2 millimeter, this is going to be the bottom part of your shoe, and if you make that too thin, it will rip a lot faster. So the thicker the foam, the more durable this is going to be. So I'm basically putting the shoe down, and I'm going to trace out the shape as it is. Okay. And since shoes are symmetrical, I'll just use this piece that I cut out to cut out the one for the next shoe. Okay, so we have full sole underneath. Next step will be, we're gonna do these tabs up here. Okay, and so transfer over the dotted lines, which are going to be trench cuts. So I'm going to do those real quick and show you guys kind of the positioning for them, as well as this piece and this top piece here. I'm going to give these a nice little bevel, so they have a little bit more of an interesting look to them, per se. All right. Okay, so you should have something like this after you've done your trench. Now you'll notice that there is a long one and a short one. Okay, so the short one is the first layer, the long one is the second layer, so that they fold over each other quite nicely and easily. And so that's going to go on top. I'm going to go ahead and bevel these edges. Right, L4 size on one. And you want to place it in a way that these three parts are equal distance from each other, and that's pretty much your placement right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark that, and I'm just gonna glue that on. All right, so these two pieces, as you guys can tell, I've already traced the line here. So basically put the large one on top of the small one, and then as you bend it, where it meets the tip there and where the corners align is literally where that line should be. So trace that and you'll have the exact placement, and then glue these two together. And then for here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slip this into one side, bring it over to the other. As you can tell, it's a little longer than it needs to be, which is perfectly fine. I'm gonna just kind of guesstimate and take a chunk out of it real quick, like so. And then as it's shortened now, I'm just gonna kind of tuck it back in. Once you have it more or less where you want it, go ahead and trace lines on either side for the registration, and also do a line on the outer edge here so you know exactly where it is that you're gluing it down to. Okay, so with that in place and these pretty much installed onto themselves, what we're going to do is where this piece meets is usually where you want this to fall. Now, most of my kits are general guidelines. You don't have to follow exactly as I do, so if you feel like you need to put it a little bit more up or put it a little bit more forward, that's completely up to you. It's the beauty of DIY. You can customize it to fit your needs. Right? So for me, I like right where this meets, so I'm going to go ahead and glue this piece to the outer sole here. Okay, and once I'm done with that, I'm going to grab this guy, stick it in here, and glue him right there, and that'll finish off the front of the boot. All right, so fast forward, meet you at the next step. Okay, that's pretty much it. I'm going to take this top piece off, and I'm going to go ahead and add the clip for here that we mentioned earlier, and that'll be done. Alright guys, so if you made it up to this step, you are done with your Soldier 76 boots. Congratulations. So there are a couple of differences between this version and the first version of it that I made. So obviously the biggest one being that I have completely covered the bottom on this one that I did with the tutorial. Even though I did do the strap with you guys in the tutorial, it wasn't absolutely necessary because I ended up putting this in here. But if you wanted to do the open version of this, so that you can put more types of shoes inside of it, for example, you can leave this open and put something in here, maybe like a piece of leather or a piece of 5mm foam. Don't do 2mm because it will rip eventually. As you can tell, this is going through its paces. Another big difference between the two is this part on the inside here, I just did a slit, and on this one I left it more open. This was really form-fitting to my leg, so I had to do this opening so I could fit more of my pants in here, whereas this one I purposely made it a little bigger so that there was enough room, but just in case I have this opening slit right here. And on both of them you can see that we have the clips that I just put in. It just helps keep everything locked down, and that is pretty much it as far as some of the larger differences. So this is obviously a low top sneaker. This one looks a little bit more chunky because it's a proper military boot. All right, yeah, and that pretty much wraps this one up. I'm not really gonna go into painting. Fairly straightforward, just like with all of my other tutorials. Make sure you heat seal your foam. Plasti dip everything with at least 2 coats. And the paint job is very subjective because depending on what skin of soldier that you're working on, you're going to do different types of silvers and colors and stuff like that. And definitely don't forget this last piece here. Remember, we had touched on it earlier. When you're done painting these pieces, right, this is the last thing that you're going to do, is just barge these into place, okay, after obviously you have painted these. And yeah, some might argue that this is not super game accurate, but at the end of the day, when I had made these boots, I had made it for a combination of 2 characters, so I wasn't really trying to be super accurate. I just wanted the general silhouette. So just like most of my tutorials, this is pretty much a guideline, so you guys, you know, take the creativity that you need to add on parts, take away parts, and really make it your own. All right, guys, so this has been Cass from GiveWave Studios, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.